all heart. I am Shayna Fernando, and today I'm going to be showing you a couple of tricks, I guess. It's kind of like an artist picnic, just little tasters of what you might expect if you continue along this track, I guess, with me or with somebody else, or just with you finding out the artist that you be. So a little bit about me first. I used to be a high school art teacher, so I can draw, rest assured. And as a teacher, I got to see so much judgment of teenagers who didn't even allow themselves the chance to create because they judged that they were terrible before they even tried. So in my little way, I would like to start shifting that for people and start destroying some of those judgments and projections on themselves so that people can really start to have fun creating, because I think everybody is an artist. I know that for me, art has changed my life. And often it's the pieces I don't like that have contributed the most. So I really want people to stop hating their creations, even though I still have days like that, and to just enjoy them, because that's where the real magic is. So today I am delivering to you an Arty intro class, and it's for everybody. It is for people who are arty, people who wish they were arty, and people who have already concluded that they're definitely not arty. So it's for everybody, and especially for you. So as an artist, which I am, and I'm practicing now, I say that I create little things with great love. And for me, little things are really important. As a teacher, I was told to teach that bigger is better and that size is what impresses people. And that's an interesting point of view. And I happen to have my own interesting point of view that little things are beautiful and often overlooked. I know that lots of people love trees. I moved 5 hours and my husband moved 5 hours with me just to be amongst them. But everybody looks up for the obvious beauty, and all of the beautiful autumn leaves that have fallen to the ground, they get forgotten, and they're little. I always eat with a little spoon and it helps me enjoy my food more. I love little things. My business is called Little Spoons and Sunshine, and it just reflects that. Like, I think if we can stop and just enjoy those things, the things that often are so easy to forget, the whole world gets a little bit more magic. So how does it get any better than that? Today, we are going to take some little things and we're going to create artwork with them. So yesterday I went for a walk and I found some leaves. So the leaves that I just talked about that everyone, or not everybody, but a lot of people forget, I collected a bag of them. And today we're going to turn them into artwork. So I'm going to flip my camera so that you can see what I've got happening down here. Let's see. Okay. Can we see? Yes, I think so. Okay. So I've got some leaves here, which I collected yesterday, and there's all different colors. There is different shapes, different sizes. They're beautiful, and we're going to use them to create today. I've also got some art supplies, and I really want to remind you that, or not remind you, I haven't told you yet, but I want to tell you that it really doesn't matter what art supplies you are using. I know that art supplies can be expensive, but what I would encourage you to do is allow yourself to experiment and to play with anything and everything. It doesn't have to cost the earth. When I started creating, I've been drawing forever, and I have expensive pencils now, but that's only a relatively new thing. I use just regular student quality pencils, I suppose, for years and years. So it really doesn't matter, but if you can allow yourself to play with everything. I know that as a teacher, I had to teach students clay and drawing and painting and so many different things. But not everybody is going to be able to do everything. And that's really important to remember. I can draw, and drawing is probably what I do the most. However, when I picked up clay, it was a disaster, and I'm really not a sculptor. So I think allowing yourself to try lots of different things and finding the thing that's magic for you, because one of them will be, not all of them will be, but one will. So allowing yourselves to play is really the most important thing, and what I would encourage you to do. So your art equipment does not have to cost the earth, but definitely allow yourself to experiment. Now, it's 6 a.m. in the morning here, and lighting is a little bit tricky. However, I think this is going to work better for drawing today. So, a couple of things. I'm going to show you a few different techniques today. I would encourage you to ask questions if you have any while I'm drawing. I'll be talking while I'm drawing, and I'll try not to get too carried away. But I have muted you, so just unmute yourself and shout out. So the first thing I want to show you today is really just to loosen up, because if you start to draw and you're stressed out or worried about what you're going to create, I promise it's probably not going to go very smoothly. So you really want to just relax. And I'm not exactly the most relaxed person when I need to relax. So I've got some skills and some techniques, I guess, that will help. So today, because we're looking at leaves, we're going to be looking at a lot of line. So my line freeing up exercise for you today, and you don't have to be doing this right now. You had no idea what we're doing, so I haven't expected you to bring anything, but you will get the replay of this call and then you can play along. So if you've got stuff there, you can definitely join in, but it's not necessary. Hopefully it will be exciting enough just to watch. So if you are doing this now or later, what I want you to do is to hold out one of your hands. Now you're going to notice that in your hand are lots and lots of different lines. Some people will have more than others. I've got a few, but you will notice however many you have, if you squinch your hand up like this, squinch, that's my technical term, the lines are going to be more pronounced. So you can see them a lot better. They're much more wrinkly than they were before. So there's lots more to draw, which is a plus for us. Now, equipment-wise, I have just a fine liner. So you can get these anywhere. It doesn't need to be an art supply shop. They literally sell them, like, I'm in Australia, but they have them at Kmart and anywhere, really. They're easy to find. So the one that I have is 0.2 mils. It doesn't matter how thick it is really, but just not a Nico pen. You want a nice thin pen. So with our hand that we've squinched up, you're going to pop it off to the side so you can't see mine at the moment, and you're going to look at that. You're not going to look at your page. Now this is the first tricky bit, because we automatically want to look at the page and see what we're doing. I don't want you to see what you're doing, because if you do, you're probably going to stop before you start. So what we're doing is we're going to look at the lines in our hand. We're going to start at one point and we're going to follow them with our eyes. And as we follow those lines with our eyes, we're going to copy those movements with our pen, but we're not going to look at the page. So you're going to probably end up with a mess, like a tangled mess of lines that somewhat mimic the lines in your hand. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. That's probably the most important thing. You're not going to look at your page. You're not going to know what it looks like until you're done, but it doesn't matter what it looks like. The purpose of this exercise is just to get you loosening up, looking at lines differently, noticing things that you wouldn't ordinarily, because really, when was the last time you looked at the palm of your hand and really noticed the lines that are there? So let's do this. So I'm looking at my hand away from the camera that you can't see. I'm not looking at the paper, and I'm going to follow the lines. I'm not going to take my pen off the paper, which is another thing you'll be tempted to do. Now you have to remind yourself so often not to lift your pencil, not to look at the page. It's something that will probably take some getting used to. And I'm drawing quite slowly because remembering that I am mimicking basically the movements that my eyes are making. So I'm tracing around those lines in my hand quite slowly so that I can actually notice them. These are not generally things I pay attention to, or you probably. Now, you could do this, and I have done this with students for like, I don't know, 20 minutes. There's a lot of lines in your hands, let's be honest. But I would be happy if you do it for one. So I have looked at my page and I look like I've got, I don't know, some jagged kind of landscape. I can show you a little bit closer if you like. So there's not really a whole lot happening, but I'm relaxed. So how does it get any better than that? And now we're ready to draw. So I always try and have some sort of exercise that helps free me up. If I'm doing life drawing, I always get out the butcher's paper, so the dodgy paper really, that's cheap. And I draw really big, really badly, as bad as I can, just so that I'm loose and ready and not thinking, not stuck in my head before I actually start drawing. So always try and do something like that before you start whatever it is that you're doing. So we are drawing leaves today, and I had a bit of a panic that drawing leaves wasn't very cool, but I'm all about the little things and how beautiful can we really make these leaves? They're beautiful all on their own, but we want to capture some of that in our drawings. So the first style or technique or tool that I want you to add to your kit today is something that you've probably all tried at some point, whether it be at school or on your own, is graphite. So lead pencils, similar to charcoal, I guess, but much more easy to control. So we're not going to get totally crazy with charcoal today. Now, I have a range of pencils that we will be using. So these, again, are just from any art supply store. I've got HB, 2B, 4B, 6B, and 8B. Now, the numbers basically indicate the softness of the graphite. So the bigger the number, 8B for instance, the softer the graphite is, which means the darker it is when you use it without you having to press really hard. So I know a lot of people will just have one pencil and they think to get darker tones, they just press harder. And you can definitely do that. But if you get the different grades of pencil, it's much easier, and your darker darks will be darker, really. So it really helps you out to get those tones into your picture, which helps to make it look more realistic. So as a general rule, you always start with your lightest tone and you build it up. So you slowly add your darks. And that's the rule with graphite and also with color, which we'll look at a little bit later. So I'm going to start out with my HB. And this is a fairly standard pencil. I would use this to outline my drawing. So before I start adding any shading, any tone, I would outline it with a HB just lightly, because this one is quite hard. It's not very soft. So if I press hard and make a mistake, or even not press very hard, because it is a hard pencil, it will be easy. It will be harder to rub out. And I do have an eraser just in case we need it, but the plan is not to need that today. So we'll see. Anyway, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the leaves that I'm drawing, and I will show you. I'm going to draw these ones here. So they're kind of cool. And I'm just going to pop them in front of me there so I can see them. And I'm going to just lightly start to outline my shape. Now, as I add more tones, you're going to see this a lot better, obviously. But for now, just lightly, remembering that we don't want to have to rub out if we don't need to. So when you are using harder pencils, they do leave an indent in your page. So the less you have to get rid of them, the better. Okay, so I've got an outline. You can see it there. It's not very exciting yet. So the next pencil that I'm going to get is my 2B, and I'm going to start to add some of the tone. So I'll find that my lightest tone almost always covers most of my picture, and I leave a couple of highlights where I don't add any color. But if I cover most of my picture with my first tone, it adds a nice base, which is different to the color of the paper, which I can then build on, which is handy. So I'm going to start adding my tones into my leaves. I think the other thing that's important too, if you're kind of new to drawing realistically or just in general, don't try and make it look like what it is, like obsessively, because chances are it's not going to. Whether you're copying from a photo and that's your intention or not, your creation is going to have its own energy. And in the end, that's kind of what you want. If you wanted a copy of the photo, you could just take a photo. So appreciate the artwork for what it is, its own entity, its own thing, really. Often I'll find an artwork kind of creates itself, which is fun to be a part of. Now, the other thing is today, obviously, we have sort of a time limit, or do we? We could just go all day, I suppose. But I'm not going to spend hours on something I probably could if I wanted to. So I want to show you lots today. I want you to leave this and be watching this replay and creating your own bits of magic, whether they be leaves or something else little that catches your attention. The things about little things is it can be anything, and you can start to appreciate them in ways you haven't before, which is actually a really beautiful thing. So remembering that this is like, if I were working in colors, this is just one color. And if you can start to think about lead pencils as colors, your creations are going to get a lot more depth to them, I guess. Really working with the different shades is going to help your creations to pop. Okay, so that's tone 1. So that's my 2B. I'm going to come in with my next one, which is my 4B. So they go up in 2s. They can go up in 1s, but it's not really necessary. I think it's a bit of overkill, really. So just go up in 2s. The 4B is my next one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at what I've got, which is a good solid base, and I'm going to start adding some of the shadows or the darker areas over the top. So we're building up in layers. If you were on my Canva calls, we worked digitally, and it was pretty much the same. So all artwork is about layers and building them up, and that will make for a richer picture. So, richer picture. I like it. So already you can see me coming in and noticing that this pencil is darker.
Now you'll also notice that I'm working quite roughly, I guess. And when I'm working with pencil, I kind of do this automatically. And you don't have to. You can do really beautifully blended things. It's just a choice, and it will be a matter of you finding your style and what you like. If I really slow down and pay attention to what I do with my pencil, it kind of moves in scumbly, circly movements. And I like that because you don't see like scratchy pencil lines. When I colour with coloured pencils, I always use circular motions as well. It helps to cover areas of the paper smoother, I guess. You don't end up with all these little white bits, and if you do, they're really balanced if you work in circles, which is good. It's handy. All right, so my leaves are really starting to happen, and I've got a good depth of colour at the moment. So I'm going to go up to my 6B, and I don't think I'll use my 8B today. I really don't think I need it, but you get the idea of how playing with the different densities can really help to build up your picture quite quickly. So obviously, style-wise, this is quite realistic. It's not photorealistic, but that's not what we're going for. And you can draw anything in this way. In terms of what I am wanting to offer to you, it's kind of like a toolkit, I guess, of different tools that you can use if you choose, but you don't have to. So, of course, I have this tool in my belt. I can draw realistically if that's what I want to do, but I'm not limited to that. So often I'll sit down and draw something that looks like nothing, and I'm okay with that. I can draw realistically if I want to, but sometimes for fun, that's not what I want to do. So I've got lots of things that I can do, and every day or in every 10 seconds, I pick the one that's fun for me. And when you're creating, that's really important. Don't push yourself to be doing something you don't enjoy. I am not going to jump at doing clay. It's really not what turns me on. And I'm really not good at it. Interesting point of view. So take the things that you enjoy, take the things that make you smile, and create with them. So I have my leaves. I've got my 3 different tones there, 2B, 4B, and 6B with my HB outline, which we can't see anymore. So that's my first style, I guess, that I wanted to show you. And it's probably the one that all of you, whether you have done it a lot or not, are most familiar with. So I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to move away from pencils for a second, and I'm going to get back my fine liner. So this is probably the piece of art equipment I use the most. I will sit in front of the TV and I will just doodle. I know a lot of you will get on the phone and you pick up a pen and you start to scribble all kinds of things. That's kind of what I do. And in terms of the art that I enjoy, that's what I love the most. So I never know where it's going to go. I never know what it's going to turn into. And it's fun watching it unfold and really watching it kind of create itself. So I've got my fine liner, and I'm going to draw some leaves, which obviously are not going to look realistic like these ones. With a fine liner, you're probably not going to get that. And I don't want them to look like that. I'm going for something a little bit more stylized and something which really emphasizes the lines of a leaf, which, like when we looked at our hand, we often don't stop to really appreciate how beautiful they are. So I've got lots of examples in front of me, and I'm going to use them as inspiration rather than
something to copy. So the shape that I come up with this time, I'm purposely not going to copy something in front of me. I'm going to do something else. So let's see. And also remember, not every creation is going to be a masterpiece. Your first one might be. It probably won't be. And if you're asking yourself, it definitely won't be. I think as artists, we judge ourselves so harshly, and I can see it. I can't necessarily change it for myself all the time. But if I stop and I actually ask the question, am I being kind to myself? Generally, I'm not. And I would like for you and for me, what would it take for that to begin to change? Because our creations are magic, all of them. Okay, so I've got a shape. It's sort of a bit like a leaf. Remembering that I'm not copying the leaves in front of me, I'm just kind of coming up with something a little bit fun. Now I've got all of this blank space here to play with, and I could do lots and lots of different things in there. What I want to do is use something really simple and show you how effective it can be. So I'm going to use one thing, and that thing is a line, and that line's pretty much a straight line actually. So really, really easy. We're stepping right back to the start. My husband actually says this isn't easy, and he wonders why I'm showing you. He said, people can't draw straight lines like you can. But if you look at them closely, they don't have to be straight, and mine are definitely not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split my leaf up into segments based on these kind of divots I've created around the edge. And I'm going to bring those segments into the middle of my leaf. All right, step one. Now, basically, we are going to do that over and over again. So within these segments, we're going to split them up again into narrower pieces with the same lines coming into the center, just like I did. So I'll start, I was going to start in the middle, but that would be a bit backwards. So let's see. Now, the first thing you're going to notice when you start filling up these segments is as you get more and more lines, you're going to get these little dense patches where it goes a bit darker. And that's exactly what you want, actually. It's going to help create the depth in your leaf that you would get by using different shades of pencil. And obviously with a pen, you can't get that. But the closer the lines get together, you get that same sort of effect. So if they're further apart, you get a lighter tone. If they're closer together, that's how you get your darks. Okay. I'm very aware that when I do the little videos to show you guys about the fun we're going to have, I speed everything up, and I'm sure it's very easy to watch. And then you come here and it's a little bit slowed down. I feel like I need to press my fast forward button. But it is fun, and allowing yourself to just enjoy the process. I know when I do things like this, it's so repetitive. It's almost a bit like meditating, I guess. You just zone out and you don't really pay attention to what you're doing. And before you know it, you've been sitting there for an hour drawing lines.
Almost there. And then I'm going to show you that these lines are definitely not straight. You can probably see them. But when you've got a lot of them, they look perfect, let's be honest. And they don't have to be, which is amazing. There's really no room for perfection in art. And I am a self-confessed perfectionist. So it's something that I've really had to let go of, especially as I'm creating more now that I do this for a living, I guess. I've had to let go of some of that. And it's a process, but learning to, I guess, acknowledge the magic in the mistakes. There are going to be mistakes. There are going to be times it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to turn out. And like I said, in my own experience, some of the artworks I've least liked have contributed to me the most. So allow them to be what they will be. So this is my leaf here. You can see the lines are all wobbly. None of them are perfect. Some of them intersect before they reach the middle, and that's okay. But as an overall piece, it's quite beautiful. So I really got that sense of tone by having my lines come closer together in the middle. And it's just black and white, which can be beautiful and fun. And I love black and white. I also love color. So I'm going to prep another one of these. I'm going to do it almost the same, but I'm going to have some color in the background. And that color is going to be really loose and really relaxed, and it's going to be watercolor. So I have some watercolors here today, which I'll probably just explain can come in a multitude of ways. So this is a palette, obviously, that has these pots filled with the different colors. You can buy watercolors just in a tube like this, like sets of them, and that's perfectly fine. You can get kind of chalky powder palettes, which again are fine. They all do the same thing. Play with them and realize that they are a little bit different. And the biggest thing that you will notice is the pigment and how intense it is. So these ones are quite rich. The color is bright, which I love. The chalkier powders are much more pale and watery, I guess. They're watery watercolors, and that can be beautiful if that's the kind of thing that you are after. But I like bright and intense, so I opt for these liquid-based palettes. So I've got a paintbrush. I've got some water off camera that you can't see. I can't possibly fit everything in. And I'm going to come in quite loosely. It does not need to look like anything, really. But I'm going to sort of get the shape of the leaf I just created. So I've come in with a bit of green, quite loosely, and a different green. So this is literally just happening on the paper. This is not planned out. Yes, it's a similar sort of shape. I've picked greens just because they're leafy kinds of colors. You could do any colors you like. But notice that I'm not really being pedantic about what goes on. Once that paint hits the paper, I'm kind of letting it do whatever it wants. And I'm going to just leave it like that to dry. So that's prepped, and we can come back to it later. And now I'm going to show you something else. So your toolkit's getting fuller by the second, and I'll just check. I think I have a chat. It's very soothing to watch. Oh, good. I'm glad. And yes, love the result too. I'm not sure which result you love, but I'm glad you love it. So let's keep going. So the next technique I'm going to show you is my absolute favorite, and I love it because it gets overlooked way too often. So I'm going to show you colored pencils. And I think we tend to look at colored pencils like something that kids take to school.
and they belong in your pencil case. And when you're young, you use them all the time because it's fun, and we stop. And I know that it's kind of on the rise a little bit. There are colouring books everywhere, which is great. And still, a lot of people aren't using coloured pencils. They're getting all of these fancy pens and markers, and they're using those. And the poor old colour pencils are getting forgotten. And I love coloured pencils. So I have a bit of a selection here today. So I've pulled out colours that I think I would be using for leaves, obviously. I have a lot of coloured pencils. So the set that I had, which I loved, I had for 8 years. And that was the first good set of pencils that I got. And there were 240 of them. So I had my choice of colours. They were amazing. And they got smaller and smaller. My bright green, so this colour here, I didn't really think I was a green girl, but it got smaller and smaller to the point I had to get an extender to hold on to it because it was just so tiny and I didn't want to part with it. So it got to the point that they were all getting a little bit like that, and my husband bought me a new set of pencils, which I will show you a little bit later on. They're in the background, and they're amazing as well. So there are hundreds of those. I definitely have my choice of colours, and I'm lucky. But remember, you don't have to have expensive pencils. Some of my favourite artworks that I've created were before I got expensive pencils, and I don't love them any less. You can't tell. I could hold 2 artworks up and no one's going to say, oh, but that was cheap pencils. So just get whatever you can get and start playing. So I'm going to draw another leaf, and I'm going to show you 2 different techniques this time. On one side, I'm going to do coloured pencil, and that's where I'm going to start. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to give my leaf an outline and a base colour. And I'm going to start with my lightest tone that I'll be using today. And it's this creamy colour. So you could outline with lead pencil, but if you do that, you may see it. Okay, it's quite different to the coloured pencils. And if you're not coming in very dark, you don't want to have those grey outlines. So I always outline with a colour, a lighter colour instead. Like the lead pencils, you always want to start lighter and build up your darker tones. And let's start. So I'm only going to do half a leaf with coloured pencil, which is a bit funny. Now this leaf, I love this sort of leaf. And when I went for a walk yesterday to find leaves for us to draw, this was what I was going to get. And as beautiful as they are, they've all turned red and fallen on the ground. And I was a bit late. They're all gone. So I got a million other leaves, but these ones are gone. So these are coming from my memory, inspired by the beautiful ones in front of me. So I just love these leaves. I love the shape of them. So I've outlined with my creamy colour, and I'm going to come in and basically cover my surface mostly with that same colour. Now it's not going to stay yellow, obviously, or cream, whatever this is. But it's a good base. So like my 2B pencil, it's just adding tone to distinguish from the colour of the paper. Okay, so we've got our creamy colour, and I'm going to come in with my green, my lightest green. So here we go. I'm going to look at the leaves that are in front of me just to see kind of where the darker tones would fall. But I don't have the exact leaf that I'm drawing in front of me. So some of it is just imagination. And that's probably best, remembering that we don't want these to look like photos. So I'm going to start coming in directly over the top of the color that's already there. And just like my graphite leaves, so my black and white ones, gradually the color is going to build up and you will see more of what the leaf looks like. So more of the form will pop out, more of the detail will be made apparent, all of that stuff that makes it look like a leaf, I guess. So I guess I was surprised by the fact that my green ran out before anything else. But of all the things, I chose to draw leaves today. So maybe that tells you something about me, and no wonder my green ran out first. When I was walking yesterday, like I said, I was worrying, like, is it silly just to be drawing leaves? But there was lots of flowers around and lots of other things, which I think automatically people would look at as the beautiful things, as the things to pick up and take home, as the things that you would want to stop and really pay attention to. And I thought, better than anything, the leaves really, they really are what I'm about. So they're little things and they are beautiful. I think when you start creating and you realize that not everything is going to look the way you intended it to look, sometimes you won't be happy with it, and that's okay. But being able to look at it and realize that there are little things in any creation that are beautiful, whether you like the piece as a whole or not, being able to see the beautiful bits is what I'd love you to move towards. I'm not expecting that you'll love everything you start creating, that automatically you're going to be some Da Vinci-like artist creating magnificent things. But what else is possible? You might be. Who knows? So a lot of my yellow I am covering with this green. However, if I didn't have the yellow behind there, the color of the green would be different. It wouldn't be so warm. So no layer, even if it gets covered completely, is wasted. And that's important to remember. Every layer plays its part, even if you can't see it so obviously. Okay, so we've got our colours starting to happen. Oh, make it a little bit darker in here. Now that's only 2 colours. I'm going to come in with another green, and this green's slightly darker, and I'm going to keep building up just like I have. Now the good thing about doing lots of different styles all at once, so my page is full of
it's a conglomeration of lots of different things at the moment. And the good thing about that is while you're experimenting, you'll find you probably get frustrated fairly quickly. I get frustrated quickly at the best of times. So having different options on your page means you can kind of jump between them, which is totally cool. Your drawing's not going to go anywhere. If I left this one for 5 minutes, it's still going to be fine to come back to. So feeling okay with jumping between creations is a good place to be. So colored pencil is my favorite. As I said, it's okay to have favorites. Colored pencil is it for me. It does take a little bit longer than some mediums. So colored pencil, I guess, would be, watercolor, I guess, would be much faster. Well, it is much faster. I know that. But there's something to be said for enjoying the process. And for me, colored pencils are really relaxing. I know with watercolor, like there are lots of different styles of watercolor that I could do and do. I learned traditional Chinese watercolor for 6 years, and Chinese calligraphers and artists, they study what they do for 20 years before they consider themselves okay to be out doing it in the public. And that's pretty intense. And while I can do traditional Chinese watercolor now, if I'm sitting down to create for fun, that's not what I do. It's actually a little bit stressful for me versus something that's much more loose and kind of creating itself, which is what I would opt to do myself. So I've got another green, again, darker. So I'm just continuing to build up what's here. So I'm really starting to get some form about my leaf. It's no longer kind of a flat object slapped on my paper. It's starting to pop out at me. And this is with 4 colors so far. So we're building it up, definitely. But once you've got your first maybe 2 layers down, the rest are really quite easy because you've already laid out where your dark areas are, where your lighter areas are, and you're kind of just adding more and more. Okay, just quickly, I'm going to come back in with my lightest color. Now, ordinarily you go from light to dark. However, I'm going to come back in because I'd like some of that yellow to pop a little bit more. So by going over the top, it's going to take what's already there and it's just going to make it
come out again, because it can get a little bit lost once you start bringing everything over the top. Again, with some of my brighter green, just helping it to pop a little bit more. It's just brightening things up, really. And remembering that it's about layers, you can't really have too many. The other thing that helps when you're drawing something like this too, especially when you do have a lot of colors like I do, is getting out the colors you will need before you start, because you can get a little bit lost when there are hundreds sitting in front of you. So yes, I've got lots, but I don't have them all here on the table. I've got not even 10. And if I found that I needed another one, there's nothing stopping me from getting up and getting that, but I'm not overwhelmed by hundreds. And I'm just going to come in finally with a bit of my darkest green, and then we'll leave this one here for today, just so you get the idea. So definitely I could spend a long time on this, really paying attention to all of the different greens. I could bring in lots more, but it's not necessary. Okay. So I've got a bit of a leaf. So that's a bit closer up so you can see. I've used a sum total of 6 pencils. So 6 different colors, starting with my creamy color and then 5 different greens, and slowly I've built that leaf up. So like I said, I could go for much longer. I could bring in more greens than that. I could just spend longer with the greens I had and really refine it. But you can see it's quite easy to build those colors up if you've got them. What sort of pencils do you use? I have these ones that I use now are Faber-Castell, and they're kind of special actually because I did have Prismacolors, which were beautiful and I loved them, and I went to get another set when my green got very, very small. However, I found out that the manufacturing of those pencils had changed. The quality that used to be there isn't anymore, and they're made much cheaper. So I didn't get the Prismacolors, and I opted for these Faber-Castell Polychromos. So they're artist quality pencils, which is nice because before I had artist quality pencils, I also used Faber-Castell and I used the student quality. So I kind of just stepped up and I got the bigger guns now, which is nice. So I do love them. I had them for about a month before I was brave enough to use them. I just looked at them in their box, but I use them now and they are amazing. So story of my life, really. So I'm going to come back now. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I'm going to come back to my top leaf, which is now dry. So this is the watercolor kind of blob that I popped on the paper. It's loosely in the same shape as the leaf that I'd already created, but it's not strictly anything. And I'm going to come back in. I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did with my fine liner and my earlier creation. But this time, I'm going to come in over my watercolor. Now you're going to notice, because I didn't deliberately make it any shape, sometimes my lines will be off the watercolor, and that's okay. So I kind of think that's a little bit fun, not being limited to strictly on the color or off.
Okay, so first splitting my leaf up into segments. Now I work a lot for my own artwork, like I said, with the fine liner, with lines similar to this, and also with pattern. So pattern is fun, it's easy, you don't have to think about it. And if you're stuck for ideas, the good thing about patterns are anything can basically be turned into a pattern. So anything at all, if you repeat it, turns into a pattern. So nature is always a good place to look, but anything at all. So if you're in a room right now and you look up and you can see, I don't know, a window. So a window is a really basic shape, generally a rectangle. If you repeat that shape over and over again, you end up with a pattern. If you've got curtains on that window and there is a design, I don't know, like a swirly sort of shape, if you take that shape and you repeat it over and over again, you've got a pattern. If you think about things like chessboards, they're patterns all on their own. So you can create the patterns with color, with shapes, with lines, with anything. It doesn't matter. And for my own artwork, as well as line and as well as color, I use a lot of pattern. And I'll send you some of my stuff so you can see after this call. Basically, how you can take these same skills, which are now in your toolbox, and you can use them to create a multitude of things. So most of my work currently, and it changes, is actually watercolor and fine liner, both of which we've used today. The watercolor is always kind of free and happening all on its own, like we did today. And the fine liner is lots of lines and patterns, just like we're doing now. So you'll probably look at my work and you'll be like, oh, well, but that's amazing. It's important to know that the skills I'm teaching you today are the skills that I used to create that. So while it looks amazing now, it's actually really simple if you break it down. So I've got my leaf, I've got my color in my background, which adds another dimension, and you can have so many different colors under there. You could have purple leaves and red leaves, and it doesn't matter. But knowing that that color underneath was really loose, it just fell how it fell on the paper. I didn't try and create anything magical from the beginning, but if you could picture lots of those, that could be actually quite beautiful. So I'm going to play with my watercolor one last time, and I'm going to do the other side of my leaf. Now, watercolor, like the creations we've already done, is all about layers. It's mostly water, so it does dry really quickly, which is good. And if you can let each layer dry before adding the next one, unlike we did before, you'll get a different pattern, or a different effect, sorry. In terms of brushes, that's probably something to talk about. You want a soft brush for watercolor. You don't want like a bristly hog's hair kind of brush. It's not going to do you any favors. However, saying that, the brush I'm using right now is not a watercolor brush. So generally watercolor brushes are quite fluffy and moppy. This one's kind of got a bit more of a point to it, and it can definitely be used for watercolor. It's a soft brush, but traditionally probably you would be using a moppier kind of brush. But as I've said before, I am a perfectionist, definitely. And while I have my limits in my art, and I kind of am unkind to myself and my creations often, we're looking to shift that. But also, art is the only area that I have been willing to break the rules. And I really don't mind telling you that I'm not using a watercolor brush, but it works for what I'm creating. And
I think that's what matters. So if we're creating for the fun of it and creating to make things we enjoy, then it really doesn't matter about the rules. And really, are there any in creativity? I don't think so. I'm guessing you could do similar with watercolor pencils. I have Inktense ones. You definitely could. So the colored pencil side of the leaf you could do with watercolor pencils, and you could then add the water over the top, and they are beautiful. You could also use those instead of this side by mapping in those colors first and then coming in with your water. So I've changed my green now, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to add some different tones, just like I did with my pencil. Now, it's also important to recognize that these two sides of the leaf are definitely not going to be the same. So you're going to get very different effects with the watercolor versus the colored pencil. And you might, if you're playing with this later, get a sense straight away for which one you prefer. You might not, and you might need to play more, so have fun with that. I also think it's important for you to realize that not every day is going to be a good art day, or maybe it is, but in your interesting points of view, it will feel like it's often not. And I woke up this morning at 4 a.m. totally confused about what I was doing up so early, and I panicked a little bit. I was like, oh, what if I can't draw today? And it could have happened, but allowing myself to come on here with you guys and just create pretty leaves regardless of what happened, and letting go of those expectations I had on myself before the call started was possibly the best thing I could have done. And that's what I want to have you or anyone who joins these calls with me start to get. So some days you will try and you won't get what you're after. And possibly it's because you're trying. I think when we don't try, that's when lovely things start to happen, because you're not creating from a place of expectation and judgment and what it should look like before you allow it to look like what it wants to look like. So I've come in with my different greens. It looks very different than my colored pencil side. And when that dries, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in again with the fine liner, and I'm going to add some detail, but something a bit more realistic. So rather than coming in with my lines and patterns over the top, I'm going to add some detail, but with the black pen. So I need to let that dry. So while that's drying, I just want to tell you a little bit about what today is for and why I've wanted to show you these things, I guess. And I might switch back so you can see my face, because obviously it's not very exciting to just look at the page when nothing's happening. Okay, so All Heart is what this is about, and it's a year of playing, basically. So it will be one art class just like this every month, and every month we will look at something different, a new skill, a new tool, a new inspirational thing that we can look at, and we will draw, we will paint, and what else is possible? I am a printmaker, I am a bookmaker, I journal, with pictures mostly, but I've discovered I like writing as well. I make dream catchers. I create fairy gardens in teacups just because I can. And I have a fairly big toolkit. And while there will definitely be some traditional skills like the painting and the drawing that we'll look at, largely what these monthly classes will be about will be up to you, because I want you to take from these skills that you can use to create things that you think are beautiful and things that make you smile. So if there are certain things that you would like to look at in the classes, then definitely tell me. I'm after your ideas, and let's get some really fun things happening. So there are options. There are always options for you to choose, and you don't have to come along for the whole year. You might just see one of the classes, which will be announced every month, so before they happen, and you can jump on for that class if it floats your boat, or you can dive right in and join me for the year and have way too much fun. What would it take? So every month I will tell you what the class is going to be about. I will tell you the things that we'll be using and looking at, and you can decide whether that class will be fun for you. And you can just jump onto that class. It's $37 US. It's not a lot of money. And I'm deliberately going to do these classes so you don't need to spend a fortune on supplies. Because I know that that can be one thing if you're looking for things to stop you from creating, as well as all of the judgments that you have on you being an artist. The cost of art supplies can be one of them. So I'm deliberately going to do them in a way you don't have to spend a fortune on art supplies, which is good. You can jump on the individual art classes. You can join me for the year. We're going to cover so much, and I think having that month in between will allow you time to play and experiment and have the sticky bits come up. So the judgments that kind of stop you thinking, what on earth am I doing? You will have time to play with those. You will have time to quickly write to me and say, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And I'll be like, stop. And that's totally okay. I expect those things to come up. And I want to clear them. I want this to be fun for you. I want you to have fun creating and start creating things that are your energy. So if I send you some pictures of my artwork, you'll likely look at it and think, that's amazing, that's the end, full stop. Those things are my energy, and your pieces are going to be beautiful and different. And that's the beauty of them. So you could try and copy what I've created. I could try and copy what other artists have created, and it wouldn't have the beauty and the energy that it has now. So definitely take inspiration from other artists when you're sitting down to create your own work. You can copy, and copying has a certain skill about it. Not everybody can sit down and copy a masterpiece, but there's the fun that comes in creating your own, and that's what I want you to uncover. So I'm gonna come back, just checking if it's dry. It's sort of dry. It's dry enough. So I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna switch my camera again and turn off the light. Okay. So I'm gonna come in with my fine liner, which I have lost. It's back. So I've got it here. I'm going to come back in over the top of my watercolor, and I'm going to start adding a little bit of detail. So I'm not going to add pattern this time. I could definitely, and it creates a more stylized, funky kind of effect. But I'm going to add detail that's a little bit more realistic, just to pull out and emphasize elements of that leaf. In terms of art supplies too, so this fine liner I showed you already is just a standard fine liner. If you drew with this, like this leaf here, and then wanted to come in with watercolor, this would go everywhere. It's not waterproof. You would end up with black smudges all over your paper. However, you can get fine liners, which I do have, which are waterproof, so you can draw with them, and then you can come in over the top with the watercolor, which is great. So today I haven't worried about that. I've come in with the watercolor first, and I've added my detail over the top. If you're wanting to work the other way, it's definitely a possibility, but you do need to make sure that you get one of the watercolor pens. If we join for the year, do we need to pay upfront, or can we pay month by month? Options, again, you will have both. So you can definitely pay month by month. If you pay all at once, it will be cheaper, like all things, but you can definitely pay month by month. So all of the options will be there for you to choose from. And like I said, there's that flexibility. Maybe there are classes that don't appeal to you, which is totally okay. And there will be classes that appeal to you that won't appeal to other people. So you choose. Every choice is there for you. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to start adding some of the veins into my leaf. All right, and in terms of other details, so I've got my lines on there. I'm going to add a form of shading, I guess, but I'm going to do it with little dots or dashes. And the closer they are together, the darker the tone. And the further apart they are, the lighter. So if I think of it in terms of my pencils, for instance, if they're closer together, it's a bit like my 8B, so nice and dark. If there's less of them and they're spread out more, that's a bit like my 2B, so much lighter. So I can start seeing that tone created. Okay, so add a little bit more, just so you can get the idea. So in terms of tools and skills, this is called stippling, which is a series of dots or small dashes to create your tone. And it's funny, when I teach this, or when I taught this at high school, the kids would love it because they'd get their pencils and they'd start banging on the table to create 1,000 little dots. And a class of 30 students doing that is so loud. So I'm grateful that you guys are on the other side of the camera when you sharpen your pencils and have fun with stippling, because it can be a little bit much. But they had fun, so it's okay. I just learnt to chill out and zone out from the banging pencils. And the other thing is too, underneath this stippling, there was some tone created by the watercolor. So all this is doing is kind of adding to that. And I've still got that color in the background to add even more depth. Layers really is where it's at. I've said before, it's just like in winter time when you're walking down the street and you see someone with lots of layers, when they've got their jacket and their beanie and their scarf and their boots. When someone's got lots of layers, you know they've got it going on. They're totally sorted. They weren't flustered in the morning. They knew exactly what went with what. And your artwork is the same. So the more layers you can bring in, the more complete and appealing and interesting your artwork will be, I believe. I remember the first time I went to a big art gallery, and the first artwork I saw when I walked in was a big white canvas with a tiny red square in the middle, and that was it. So it definitely did not have a whole lot of layers going on. Saying that, I definitely did not find it interesting, other than wondering how that got into the gallery. I think I was like 13, and I had the expectation and judgment that to be considered amazing, which you think it would be if it's in the gallery, that it had to be complex, it had to look like a photograph, and that's just not true. So while it didn't appeal to me personally, it kind of took that judgment and blew it out of the water. Okay, so I've got some stuff happening. So it really helps to add detail. It's simple and easy. It's dots. How easier does it get than that? And it's helped to add complexity, I guess, to what was actually quite loose and formless. There was some colour there, but not really any detail indicating that it was a leaf. So now that is there. Now, that's me skill-wise for you today. Let me turn back to my face. And okay, you can see me. Like lights. So I would like you, I'm going to send this replay to everybody who registered, whether you're on live or whether you couldn't make it today and you're going to be watching this later on. I'm going to send this to you and invite you to watch it as many times as you like, as many times as you need to actually start creating. And I have no doubt that some of you will watch it twice before being brave enough to pick up the pencil and actually put it on your piece of paper, which is totally okay. I'm not going to make you post what you create. It can be terrible. Make it be as terrible as you possibly can. What would it take? And really have fun with it. So turn on the music. Have your pajamas on. I always wear my pajamas, except for today. So I always wear my pajamas when I'm creating. I almost wear pajamas all day. But I paint all over my pajamas and I have a lot of them, and my husband gets very frustrated when I come out and there's like yellow paint all over my blue pajama pants. But he stayed around, so there must be something there. Make sure you're comfortable. Make sure you are in an environment that makes you feel good. If you are locked away in a room that just isn't fun for you, you're probably not going to create your best work. Take your things outside. Sit in the sun. It doesn't have to be done at a desk. So destroy all of that. Destroy all of those expectations of what an artist should be like. An artist should be like you. You're an artist, and I want you to take from today that every single one of us is an artist. And I've said it, I've written it before, our wand is our brush, our wand is our pencil, our wand is whatever you are using, and using that to create your magic. So your artwork will not look like mine, and my artwork will never look like yours, but that doesn't make any one of our artworks any less beautiful. So tell me what you thought about today, definitely. Tell me what you would like to look at in the next 12 months, remembering we can go anywhere. I have lots and lots of skills at my disposal. I will share them with you. I want you to be creating in a way that makes you happy. And if one of my skills is what turns that on for you, then that's what I want to get across. So, does anybody have any questions before we end today? I guess. No? Cool. So I'm so grateful that you came on this morning. If you're in Australia, it's quite early. If you're not, then I'm so excited to have you here from wherever you are. And I will keep you posted. So I will be probably sharing some more. It's what I do, and I will keep you posted as to what our first classes will be. I will share all the details for where you can jump on and decide that you're going to have way too much fun with me. We can have like a party maybe, like we can turn on the music and create here via Zoom. How much fun can we have? So you might not like my music though, that's the only thing. We'll give it a go. So thank you for coming. Have a beautiful weekend wherever you are. And I adore you guys. Thank you. Bye.